I am the obedient girl in my parents' eyes, the one they say is the most excellent child. But privately, I have an unusual fetish. I like dolls with missing limbs, broken cups, ruined dresses. I enjoy everything that's imperfect, including my neighbor's blind brother. An exciting story is about to begin. Aji, take this plate of dumplings to deliver to brother Yin Shu next door. I sat by the window, cutting into the doll my mom just bought for me with scissors. Hearing Song Yin Shu's name, my lips instantly curved into a smile. I ran barefoot to the table and obediently picked up a plate of dumplings. Song Yin Shu's family was in a car accident last year. His parents died on the spot, and he lost his eyesight in that accident. My mom, upon learning he was blind, set aside a portion of the dishes for him every day after his parents passed away. And I have successfully taken on the job of delivering the food. In my mother's eyes, I'm probably a kind-hearted good girl. What he doesn't know is that my greatest joy each day is to visit Song Yinshu next door. I like Song Yinshu. I like the emptiness in his eyes gazing at something he cannot see beneath his handsome features. That look of helplessness drives me crazy with joy. I ran to Song Yinshu's doorway, listening to his cane tapping on the ground, feeling like ants were gnawing at my heart. Then the door seemed to loosen. Song Yinshu's vacant eyes tried to face me. I suddenly got close to him where he could not see. He probably just got out of the bath. There was a fresh scent on him. I watched his longulus tremble slightly. Gigi. It did not respond, just watched him from an arm's length. Soon after, he chuckled softly. Gigi, you're ignoring me again. I laughed and hugged his arm. Time for dinner, brother. Song Yinshu's arm stiffened slightly in my embrace, his expression somewhat uneasy. My body has begun to develop. Men and women are bound to be different. And Song Yinshu extracted his arm from my embrace, his ears already starting to turn red. I felt an urge to kiss his ears, watching his blind eyes moving aimlessly. The fiery look in my eyes was completely unseen by Song Yinshu, who took the plate from my hands and said gently, "Thank you, Gigi." The next second, he closed the door as if he was trying to escape. I stood at the doorstep motionless. There's no rush. Tonight, I'll go look for my brother. The balcony at our house is very close to Song Yinshu's house. Just a gentle hop, and I can reach his place. While Song Yinshu has never made a habit of locking the balcony door. Ever since the car accident a year ago when Song Yinshu had the accident, I visit his place almost every night. A beautifully imperfect doll makes me go crazy with affection. Tonight, Song Yinshu even left his bedroom door open. I quietly approached his room, watching by the moonlight as he slept. I lay beside him, gently caressing his face. In his sleep, Song Yinshu unconsciously wrapped his arm around me waist. Tonight, I was only wearing a sheer dress, my developing physique faintly visible. I reached out, softly hugging his neck, my cold hand warmed by his body heat. I began to kiss his lips, his cheeks, his eyes, until I felt his eyes flutter. I quietly watched him open his eyes. Song Yinshu paused for a moment, then asked, "Who?" Of course I wouldn't tell him who I was. As long as I didn't make a sound, he would never know. He tried to release the hand resting on my waist, but I only held him tighter. The chiffon dress was like a layer of tissue, making it feel as if there was no barrier between us. "You." His pale face suddenly flushed, and Song Yinshu's good-looking brows furrowed as he said, "Get up." I didn't move. Song Yinshu suddenly grabbed the hand I had around his waist, catching me off guard. I couldn't help but let out a "ah." The whole of Song Yinshu's body went stiff. In the dim room, close to Song Yinshu, I suddenly had an illusion that Song Yinshu was looking at me. "Gigi." Just one calend he knew it was me. I responded with a disappointed grunt. Song Yinshu loosened his grip on my hand slightly, but didn't let go. "Gigi, you're a girl, you can't do this." I'm an adult, of course, I understand these things. But I just like to act innocent and clueless in front of Song Yinshu, pretending to be a well-behaved girl with an innocent face. "Why?" I moved closer and brushed my nose against his. Song Yinshu didn't avoid it, and let out a soft chuckle. "I'm a man. You doing this is not safe. Would my brother hurt me?" Song Yinshu's amber eyes shifted. I watched his Adam's apple move up and down. "Gigi, go home." I snuggled closer into his embrace. My voice nasally. "I had a nightmare. Brother, I'm scared to sleep alone." When I was a child, I often climbed over from next door to sleep with Song Yin-shu. Every time I fall asleep, Song Yin-shu would carry me home. But today he did not. While I pretended to be asleep next to him, I heard his heavy breathing and a voice slightly hoarse with emotion. Gigi, I can't control myself when you're like this. He thought I didn't hear. But I heard the thrill he hid inside. I was awakened by the light shining through the curtain at this time. My parents should have gone to work, and they probably couldn't imagine that their daughter, who slept in the bedroom, was already lying in someone else's bed. I was still in the position of holding Song Yin-shu. I looked up into his eyes. Strangely, he clearly couldn't see, but his gaze was still on me. Awake? He asked, his voice magnetic with sleep, and my fingers curled unconsciously as I listened. Brother, I pouted, deliberately asking, did you sleep well last night? Song Yin-shu lay quietly beside me, his expression unreadable. 2 buttons on his chest were undone, not sure if from rough handling, leaving a red patch on his pale skin, making it stand out more. My throat felt dry, and I was inexplicably fidgety, unable to find relief. Gigi, don't come in the middle of the night next time. You're grown up, not a child anymore. Doesn't my brother want me to be close to him? Song Yin-shu lowered his eyes without responding. I took the opportunity, but I really like being close to my brother. Song Yin-shu pushed my approaching body away, frowning. Gigi, no? The next second, I was lifted from the bed by him. He brought me to the doorway, his hand on the door handle, trapping me in between. The broad chest of the man almost completely enclosed him. Suddenly, the door was opened with a soft noise. I heard footsteps in the corridor. He whispered in my ear, should I take you back? Or should you return to where you came from? I was only wearing a sheer dress, barely concealing. Song Yin-shu couldn't see it. But if someone else did, they would instantly see my intentions. I pushed him away and ran to the balcony. Almost instinctively, I glanced back at him, and perhaps following the sound, Song Yin-shu's gaze was on me. But for some reason, I felt something was off. I ran back to the room only to find my best friend had been calling me all morning. I picked up the call unhurriedly, and Lin Si's voice came through. Xiaozhang, are you dead? I was lying on the bed with my eyes on the balcony. Song Yin-shu was hanging out the clothes he had just washed on the balcony, now wearing a white shirt that he had rolled up his sleeves, revealing his muscular arms, the veins on the back of his hands standing starkly out. I squinted slightly. He was hanging up the clothes he wore last night. I came back to my senses and smiled. Happy birthday, baby. I didn't close the balcony door, so the sound easily reached Song Yin-shu's ears. His hand paused while he was fixing his clothes. Lin Si's tone softened a bit on the other end of the phone. Do you remember that today is my birthday? I've been calling you all morning, and you haven't picked up. I was about to call the police. Sorry, baby, last night I stayed up late. As I was speaking, my gaze kept falling on Song Yin-shu and his reddened earlobes. Forget it. I won't fuss over it. Lin Si huffed. Come to my place now immediately. Okay. I hung up the phone, got up to leave, but was stopped by Song Yin-shu from the balcony. Where are you going? I turned around, smiling at him. It's Qianqian's birthday. Song Yin-shu had his back to me, so I couldn't see his expression, only heard his suddenly heavy tone. Change your clothes. I was taken aback. My fingers slightly curled my clothes. Even if you can't see, you'll still feel the fabric. You're wearing too little. I pursed my lips, feeling somewhat pleased, and turned to the wardrobe to get a little skirt, then took off the clothes I was wearing. From the balcony, I heard the sound of a clothes hanger falling to the ground. I turned around, and Song Yin-shu was no longer on the balcony. As soon as I got to Lin Si's house, she thrust me into a crowd of men. After patting my shoulder and giving me a look, she ran off to play on the other side. I stared helplessly at her retreating figure, silently playing with my phone among the group of men. Ever since we graduated high school, Lin Si has been tirelessly trying to find me a boyfriend. In her eyes, compared to me, who only knew about studying, she felt my love life was pitiful because she had no single periods in high school. She has even suspected several times that I liked girls, or even had a crush on her. I couldn't be bothered to explain. Instead of telling her about my interest in Song Yin-shu, it was better to continue being the bookworm in her eyes. Are you the Gigi that Lin Si always talks about? The man seated next to me passed me a glass of wine, and I looked up and met his eyes. He didn't avoid my gaze at all, looking at me with gentle eyes, / do you drink? Do you want me to get you some juice instead, / I shook my head, looking innocent / I don't drink / The man chuckled, leaned down against the table edge, poured me a glass of juice. And when he sat back down, he was a bit closer to me. I looked up at Lin Si, who was talking with another man. When his gaze fell on me, it shifted away somewhat awkwardly. / do you have a boyfriend? / The man leaned back in the sofa behind me, resting one leg casually to the side. He spoke. In the eyes of others, he was very close to me, yet he kept a certain distance that was both suggestive and respectful. I shook my head and took a sip of juice. / You don't seem to want to talk to me much / he said. I looked at him with a hint of amusement / You don't really want to talk to me either, do you? / The man's lips curved slightly upward. / You're using me to annoy Lin Si, and now you're asking me to engage with you. Wow. You have a lot of demands, brother / the man glanced at Lin Si, then raised his hand, poking at me. Don't you think I'm a better match for her than the guy she's with now? I glanced at him. I don't know if you match or not, but at least she seems to care about you. The man laughed as expected. Guess so. After all, I'm so good looking. You're quite humorous. This was Lin Si's first birthday after graduating high school. Perhaps she had suppressed her feelings for too long. She drank a lot tonight, and even came over to make me drink some, until she finally couldn't handle any more and let me go. Because Lin Si kept clinging to me, I missed several calls from Song Yen-shu. By the time I called back, it was already 11. Song Yen-shu was really angry. Just from the tone of his voice, I could feel a bit nervous. What time is it? My blood was surging and rushing, and the noise around almost drowned out Song Yen-shu's voice. But just his tone was enough to make me excited. I almost am going crazy over my not-so-perfect doll. Brother, I'm a bit dizzy. I huddled in the corner, my voice somewhat aggrieved. The person on the phone took a deep breath, as if suppressing something. Have you been drinking? I gave a soft grunt. I want to go home. You want to go home? I'll take you. Just as Song Yen-shu was about to speak, my words got there first, heard by Jiang Yenjing, who was holding an overcoat, seemingly ready to leave. I glanced in Lin Si's direction, who at the moment was laughing and chatting with a man. I looked at Jiang Yenjing helplessly. All right, courage fade. Jiang Yenjing took 2 light steps to stand before me, lowered his eyes to look at me squatting on the ground. His expression unreadable. What are you looking at? Are we leaving or not? Because I was ignored by Lin Si. Jiang Yenjing almost sat by my side for the whole afternoon. 2 people barely acquainted started to bond, while Lin Si thought Jiang Yenjing was really interested in me. Maybe also with Han intent to annoy Jiang Yenjing that afternoon. He made great progress with the handsome blonde guy next to him. Completely ignoring us, Jiang Yenjing's movement was slight. Jiang Yenjing did the same. He couldn't bear it anymore, and seized the excuse I provided, holding on to it tightly. Where's your home? I'll take you there. I shook my head, intending to turn back and continue talking to Song Yen-shu. But to my surprise, the call had ended. I stared blankly at the interface, baffled. Jiang Yenjing glanced at my phone. Boyfriend. I frowned at him. Are you very bored? Gigi, are you going home? Lin Si, having overheard our conversation, stumbled over. Jiang Yenjing wanted to support him, but was beaten to it by the blonde good-looking guy. Jiang Yenjing's hand was left hanging in midair. He reacted by giving his jacket an angry shake. I nodded and got up. It's too late. My dad will be worried by now. Right, our Gigi is so good. Today is indeed too late, so I'll take her home. Jiang Yenjing suddenly spoke. Lin Si turned to look at Jiang Yenjing. Fine, you can take her if you want. Not like you seem keen on staying at my place anyway. Jiang Yenjing paused. Sneered. Sure, have fun. I'll take Gigi home. Gigi. Lin Si narrowed his eyes. You've gotten quite close to her, eh? As he spoke, Jiang Yenjing gave a glance at the blonde guy. Not as fast as you though. Who is better at socializing than you? Jiang Yenjing. What do you mean? Lin Si sensed a change in Jiang Yenjing's attitude. Just as he was about to ask, Jiang Yenjing had already dragged me out. I was already quite drunk, being dragged by Jiang Yunqing stumblingly. I only heard Lin Si behind saying, "Be gentle with her." Originally at Lin Si's place, I didn't feel like I had drunk too much, but as soon as I stepped outside and the wind blew, I fell unconscious in Jiang Yunqing's car. Not until he jolted some awake did I open my eyes in confusion. Jiang Yunqing seemed quite startled, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Was that guy a man or a ghost? I looked up Song Yanshu, wearing the white shirt from last night, his fair skin looking even more evident under the car lights, stood silently at my door. Probably hearing some sound, he took a step forward into the darkness. Jiang Yun sighed lightly. I breathed out a heavy sigh. I drunkenly beamed at Song Yanshu, laughing, and said, "That's my baby." "What?" Jiang Yunqing's face contorted into frowns, deep in thought for a moment before asking, "The guy who picked up the phone at Lin Si's place, when you called?" I kept my silly smile on. Song Yanshu's cane is exploring the ground, walking towards me. Jiang Yunqing looked a bit astonished, opening his mouth slightly. I opened the car door. "I'm going to look for my doll." Song Yanshu stopped in front of the car, as if anticipating I would run towards him. I had indeed drunk quite a bit today, and after only a few steps, I stumbled towards Song Yanshu. Almost in an instant, a pair of arms scooped me up and held me tight. I'm not sure if it's just my imagination, but I thought I saw a chill spreading through Song Yanshu's eyes. Upon looking up again, it was gone. I wrapped my arms around his waist, pressing close against him. "Brother, I've missed you so much." Song Yanshu held me up without paying me much attention. Behind us, the car lights receded, probably because Jiang Yin drifted away. "Let's go home." Song Yanshu said it lightly. I shifted from his front to clutching his back, refusing to move. Song Yanshu paused and asked, "What are you doing?" "It's too late, Dad will scold me." Song Yanshu's voice turned cold. "You know it's late." I dare not go back. I held him tightly, glancing backwards. "I want to sleep with my imperfect doll tonight." Song Yanshu stayed silent for a moment before suddenly bending down and whispering into my ear, "I'll sneak you back in." He took me upstairs, pulled out the keys from his pocket at the door. I must be drunk. I didn't even question for a moment why he had the key to my house. I just hid behind him, holding my breath in fear. Song Yanshu's eyes were like covered with a layer of glass, seemingly watching me, yet as if watching nothing. He whispered, "Keep your voice down, or my uncle will hear." I gripped his hand tightly, almost holding my breath as I squeezed into the bedroom, with Song Yanshu following at his own pace behind me. Suddenly, there was a noise from behind me. I quickly pulled Song Yanshu's arm, pushing him into my room, and I heard Song Yanshu chuckle beside my ear. I pressed my ear against the door, listening for any sounds outside. Only when there was absolute silence did I finally relax. I turned to look at Song Yanshu, who was leaning against the door, quiet, lost in his thoughts. I've never invited Song Yanshu into my room, because my territory holds too many secrets. For example, right in front of him now are photographs I secretly took of him. That's my favorite photo. Of me, and after going blind the first time Song Yanshu saw me, he took a picture. His eyes went from full of warmth to emptiness. Before that, my feelings towards Song Yanshu were just brotherly reliance. But that day, when I saw the misty look in his eyes, I fell deeply in love. I dreamed of intruding into his world, claiming the imperfect doll for myself. My love for all imperfect things reached its peak with Song Yanshu. This is my most cherished doll. The most cherished. Brother. I suddenly called him. Song Yanshu responded with an. It was too late. I could only rely on the moonlight to look at Song Yanshu. Today's moonlight seemed to exist just for Song Yanshu, shining on his face perfectly, half his face bathed in the moonlight, half in shadow. "Today. I didn't mean to not answer your call. It was really noisy at Lin Si's place, I couldn't hear it." Song Yanshu turned his head then. "Who just sent you back, Lin Si?" My head was getting heavier. Leaning against the door, I explained vaguely, "His name is Jiang Yunqing, and he likes Lin Si." "He likes Lin Si?" "Yes. What about me?" "What?" Song Yanshu touched my head. "You only mentioned that he likes Lin Si. But what about you? What do you feel for him?" I smiled at him. "I don't like him. I only like my imperfect doll." "Song Yanshu, what's an imperfect doll?" That's you. I moved closer to him, my lipstick now smearing on Song Yinshu's white shirt, my heart racing as I tried to cover up my flustered look. Sho, I whispered in his ear, let's talk quietly. Our secrets might be heard. Oh. Song Yinshu's tone dragged out, but it's quite late, I should head home. Some of Song Yinshu's bangs had fallen onto his forehead. Encouraged by the alcohol, I grew bolder, reaching out to hold his face. We mustn't wake my parents. Song Yinshu looked troubled. What should we do then? Should I go back through the balcony like you? I shook my head, brother. It's dangerous because he can't see you. What should we do then? I smiled mischievously. How about brother just stays at my place tonight? After all, I stayed at yours last night. Gigi, no. Song Yinshu pulled my hand away from his face, his tone cold. I conceded. Then could you wait until I fall asleep before you leave? Just like when we were kids. When we were kids, my parents often went on business trips, so they would leave me in Song Yinshu's care. I always liked to cling to him when going to sleep, so he would wait for me to fall asleep before going back home. Song Yinshu hesitated for a moment, and then finally nodded. I led Song Yinshu towards the bed, but after only a few steps, I felt dizzy and couldn't find my direction. Song Yinshu was caught off guard and fell to the ground with me. The small box by the bed toppled over, spilling secrets on the floor. A doll I had accidentally cut was lying next to us. Something just fell down. My doll. I was completely enveloped in Song Yinshu's embrace. His fiery gaze seemed as if it would burn the person before him. He freed one hand to try and touch the doll. My expression showed no change, but in the dim light, my breathing was somewhat rapid. This doll was custom-made to look like me. If he could see, he would definitely recognize it. When he touched the doll, I felt my blood boil as if in empathy. He ran his fingers over the doll's forehead, down its nose, and finally landed on its lips. With a smile he said, "It seems like a very cute doll." At the same time, there was a knock at the door. My father's voice came from outside the door. Is Gigi back? My heart beat furiously, pounding against my chest, while Song Yinshu's hand was still wrapped around my waist, and the door was not locked. He tightened his grip on my waist and whispered in a voice just for the two of us, "It's now 12:09. If Uncle comes in, he'll misunderstand." My breathing became erratic as there was another knock at the door. Gigi. It's me. I looked at Song Yinshu. Why are you back so late? Song Yinshu was playing with my doll. His long fingers holding controlled it tightly, as he gently rubbed its surface with his thumb. Sorry, Dad. I'll be back earlier next time. Dad outside the door spoke up again. It's too dangerous for a girl to stay out late. This won't happen again. Go to bed early. In the darkness, my hearing was particularly acute. I listened to the footsteps outside the door fading into the distance. My breathing, deep and rushed, swirled in the warmth between us, until I heard the sound of the door closing, and Song Yinshu's hand lay on my face. Gigi's face is very hot. That hand that should have been holding a doll's hand had somehow reached under my waist. I was forced to straighten up, and the hand felt like a viper gently laying there, not gripping tightly, doing nothing more than resting innocuously. I nestled in his embrace, my head rubbing against his chest, and his fingers pressed lightly, teasing like one might tease a cat, and then retreating. His face betrayed no extra emotion, making it impossible for me to guess if he was welcoming my intrusion into his space. So I moved my face very close, staring straight into his eyes. Just for tonight, together with the imperfect doll, I think I might be the only one who could feel such passionate love for Song Yinshu. The hand on my waist applied some pressure, and without giving him a chance to react, I straightened up and kissed his lips, the urge too itchy to ignore. Then I kissed the corners of his mouth, his neck, until he picked me up from the ground. I shuddered, realizing it a bit too late, and stopped, blushing deeply. With an ambiguous chuckle, Song Yinshu said, Gigi, I'm just trying to get you onto the bed. He just wanted to carry me to bed, but I mistakenly thought he was willing to kiss me. I nestled in his arms without speaking, and Song Yinshu couldn't stop laughing. The intimate atmosphere was shattered like a clashing metal sound shattered, and I wished I could just bury my head into Song Yinshu's chest. Song Yinshu held me in his arms, ran his fingers through my messy hair, and whispered in my ear, Tell me tomorrow whether you were sober or drunk just now. The next day, I was woken up by a phone call from Jiang Yunqing. The consequences of waking up after drinking too much are that I still feel my stomach churning even after getting out of bed. I leaned against the bed for a long while before I felt like I was alive again. Jiang Yunqing waited for me for an hour at the cafe downstairs. And by the time I got downstairs, he looked like a resentful hanged ghost. I sat down beside him, ignoring his look. "What do you want to talk about?" He glanced at my clothes. I had gotten up and come directly to him without even changing from last night's outfit. "Was he with that doll you were talking about last night?" I nodded. He chuckled. "Did you talk?" I shook my head. He furrowed his brows. "Just sleeping. Is he a scumbag?" With that, he rolled up his sleeves. "I had a bad vibe about him since last night. Where's his place?" "I'll have a word with him." I reached out and pulled his rolled up sleeves back down. Somewhat at a loss for words, "We didn't sleep together. Can't you think of anything else?" He sneered. "Don't act. I'm not blind. I saw it." "Saw what?" "Jiang Yunqing, your eyes." The way you looked at him was possessive, like a beast eyeing its prey, straightforward and impulsive. I was stunned, looking at him in surprise. "Was it that obvious?" Jiang Yunqing calmly said, "I'm just particularly observant. Besides, last night I noticed more than one secret." My heart skipped a beat. "What secret?" "When did your doll start becoming invisible?" "There was a car accident at his place last year." "What happened?" Jiang Yunqing nodded slightly, with a hint of a smile in his eyes, pondering something. The bell on the cafe door rang, and I instinctively looked back. Jiang Yunqing also leaned down in front of me. Song Yinshu stood silently at the doorway, the loose strands of hair on his forehead gently brushed by the wind, brushing against his eyes. His amber-colored eyes were like exhibits in a showcase. No matter how long I've known him, I am always captivated by Song Yinshu's charm. The cafe owner is a friend of Song Yinshu. After going blind, his main routes are downstairs and to this cafe. It was a normal occurrence for him to be here. Yet I felt a subtle stir in my heart, almost as if he had come because of me. Last night's kiss flooded my memory. Suddenly, I remembered what he said last night. "Tell me tomorrow, whether you were sober or drunk just now." Jiang Yunqing raised an eyebrow. "Would he be angry seeing us together?" "Have you forgotten that he can't see?" "I haven't forgotten." Jiang Yunqing drank. He sipped his coffee, tapping his fingers on the table, pausing slightly between words. "But still, how could a blind person know you would fall? Even manage to catch you so precisely?" "Chen Pianji, your doll. It seems like he can see." I didn't rush to verify whether Song Yinshu's blindness was real or feigned. Not far away, Song Yinshu and his friend were talking about something, and Song Yinshu didn't look too pleased. I picked up my phone, but my eyes were still on Song Yinshu. After about 2 or 3 seconds, Song Yinshu picked up the phone. His voice was much gloomier than last night. "Who is it?" "Unhappy." Song Yinshu paused for a moment and asked, "Are you there?" Jiang Yunqing was nearby and could hear it. Upon hearing, he chuckled softly. I didn't answer his question. "Can you finish your coffee in 10 minutes? Song Yinshu didn't respond. I continued, "My parents aren't home. Come over to my place in 10 minutes. I hung up the call and turned back to look at Jiang Yunqing. He tilted his head slightly, his brows and eyes curved into a smile. "You're welcome." Song Yinshu took less than 10 minutes, almost 2 minutes after I arrived home. Song Yinshu appeared at the doorstep. I leaned against the doorway, watching her without changing my expression. The atmosphere was very tense. Song Yinshu was first to speak. "Gigi." I didn't say anything. I just grabbed his hand and pulled him into the house. Last night my mind was clouded. Many details hadn't been thought through. I led him forward and asked in a low voice, "Where did you get the key to our house?" "From Uncle." While talking, I had already led her into the room. Song Yinshu's photo was placed in a very obvious position. Almost as soon as one entered, the gaze would unconsciously fall on it. I held Song Yinshu's hand and guided him to touch the picture. Song Yinshu paused for a moment. His expression changed slightly. "Guess what this is?" Song Yinshu tried to move his hand, but I held it tightly so he couldn't move it. "I don't know. I don't know." "Are you acting recklessly now?" Song Yinshu doesn't meet my gaze. And to some extent, his acting skills are good enough for the entertainment industry. For a year, he truly hasn't shown any flaws. I looked at him straightforwardly and calmly. Song Yinshu, do you remember what you asked me last night? He nodded. Then let me ask you. What should you do if I were sober? His amber eyes flickered. It's hard to cover up the details. Several times in the past he always met my gaze. Perhaps I should have noticed it earlier. He seemed to sense something was off with me, hesitated for a moment, and then remained silent. Continuing on my own, I said when I was little, Mom always said I was different from other children. While walking down the street, when girls were eyeing dolls and toys, I wouldn't even glance at them. At that time, Mom thought I just didn't like those things. But when she brought back cast-off toys from my little aunt for me, she would often catch me obsessively playing with them in my room. She thought perhaps I was just too shy to express my likes. After that, she would always buy me dolls and such, but I still didn't like them. Every day I clutched onto the dolls my aunt had broken. At first, that was all I did. But later, I wasn't satisfied with just that. When I got tired of those few dolls, I started dismantling new ones. I was obsessed with their imperfections. I knew I was different, but this feeling of satisfaction drove me mad with excitement. Brother, do you know your eyes, the ones that can't see, have been the thing I've been most infatuated with since I was young. I've never felt this way about anything else. Just seeing your eyes would drive me wild with excitement. I know it's not normal, but I can't control it. I don't want to be normal. I just want to keep you, my blind brother, forever by my side, with my toys together forever. Gigi. I looked straight into that handsome face, with no warmth, saying, brother, does he like me, or does he think? Suddenly, I grabbed the small knife on the table, and thrust it towards my right hand, going. Song Yinshu's pupils constricted, and he quickly seized the knife handle. You. The small knife only pierced shallowly, blood welling up like a bead on my hand. I drew close to his eyes, curling up the corners of my mouth. Or is it just fun to see the other side of me? His face, as cold as frost, finally showed some emotion, and those eyes met mine directly. Song Yinshu's palm caressed my neck, my bodice stiffening and tingling as he embraced me, trapping me against his broad chest. It's good it's been discovered. Pretending not to see anything when you're with another man is really exhausting. Then his fingers started trailing down from my neck, exploring my spine, forcing my slender back to stiffen. I did lie to Gigi. He lifted me up, his hot breath alighting on my ear. I gently pushed against his chest, but was taken aback by how scorching his body was. I suddenly pulled my hand back as his lips touched my ear. He even looked smug while deceiving me, and still had the audacity to kiss me. Anger finally penetrated through my haze. My push this time was harder. But the next second, both my hands were tightly held by one of his. The strength of this man was greater than I had imagined, and I couldn't move at all. With his other hand still around my neck, he kissed my cheek, almost as if teasing. Each kiss was very light. Words spread in the amorous atmosphere. Shin Pianji. There's also a secret your brother has. Do you want to hear it? There was a sound of a key turning from the living room. My dad had returned from work. Before I could react, I was picked up by Song Yinshu. His legs were long. In just one step, we were at the balcony of his house. There was a knock on my bedroom door. Gigi. Song Yinshu didn't take me into his house. Instead, he stopped at his balcony, where I could clearly hear my father's voice. He held my hands above my head and kissed me without restraint. My legs began to weaken. Not at home. Where's he off playing now? With his facade broken, Song Yinshu ceased all pretense. Handsomely dressed but hiding another side, he propped one hand against the wall, lowered his head to capture my lips, and gently bit them. My mind was a void. I could only sense a wild deer rampaging inside my heart. I had come here to confront him. Now what's this about? His blindness was clearly an act. I shouldn't be attracted to him. Why don't I want to push him away? No. It must be because he's too skilled at kissing. That's just a normal physiological reaction. In a daze, with my neck upward, the room darkened suddenly. He closed the curtains. I suddenly realized something was wrong. If I stay here any longer, I really won't be able to control myself. I pushed against his chest, trying to squeeze out from under his arm. But just as I started to move, Song Yinshu wrapped his arms around my waist. His strength was truly formidable. He lifted me up with just one arm, causing me to cling to his back out of fear. He carried me into the room and tossed me onto the couch. I tried to flip over and run, but he caught my ankle, and my whole body sank down. A shadow loomed in front of my eyes. Song Yanshi leaned down and pressed down on me. The room was eerily quiet, highlighting the sound of my rapidly beating heart, almost suffocating with tension. Gigi, your eyes never used to fall on me, with an unusual allure in his voice, so you never noticed that I've liked you for a long time. I never cried in front of anyone when my parents passed away. They said my brother was strong, but how would my 23-year-old brother know what to do without parents? Everyone's pitying looks seemed to constantly remind me that I was all alone, that my brother had no home. I grew to hate those looks that threatened to consume me. I thought it would be better if I couldn't see them. I wouldn't have to deal with others' pity or relatives getting close just for their own benefit. So I just pretended I couldn't see anything, hid myself, and saw no one. In the dim room, Song Yanshu's eyes held a gleam. But Gigi doesn't listen at all. The more I tried to push her away, the more she clung. She would come unannounced on the hardest nights for my brother, silently wrapping her small body around me. However, her gaze wasn't one of pity. It was of fascination, like she was savoring my distress. Later I learned her secret. She liked what I couldn't see with my eyes. I was disappointed because I wanted someone to love me forever. If keeping her by my side meant I had to continue pretending not to see, then I was willing to do it. His head was drooping on my neck, the warm sensation falling on my collarbone. Gigi, you're all I have left. Song Yanshu, you're very good at deceiving people. In the last rays of light, I stared intently at the ceiling. He held me tightly, as if he wanted to meld me into his body. Are you going to leave me? I held his face, making him look at me. If I said I wanted to go, would you let me? For a moment, his eyebrows seemed like cold scabbards, but the next second, he regained his gentle demeanor. Yes. I let out a little laugh. You're lying again. Does Gigi want to leave? I put my arms around his neck. Didn't you say I'm all you have left? What will you do if I leave? Besides, in front of others, Kuan Yu Qiushuang's younger brother, Song Yanshu, secretly likes to bully his next-door sister. Just thinking about it is thrilling. Song Yanshu frowned. When did I bully you? Now. I reached out to tug at his shirt. Several buttons of the shirt popped open, revealing a bit of his pristine skin, which flushed red at the slightest touch. He lifted me up from the couch, the weightlessness making my head spin. I felt my body floating, unable to find its place, but this sensation made me surrender, infatuate. I was carried along by him, falling into the abyss. I didn't know when I had returned to my room. By the time I woke up, it was already morning. I could faintly hear my father's voice from the living room. I paused for a moment, then heard Song Yanshu's voice. I sat up abruptly in bed and ran out of the bedroom with bare feet. Song Yanshu was sitting on the couch in my living room, the sunlight casting shadows that outlined his straight-nosed bridge, eyelashes drooping downwards. My dad and mom sat around him with uncommonly grave expressions. The air was so still you could hear a pin drop. I murmured a soft aha, and Song Yanshu on the sofa. Look, you pat me first. I winked and grimaced at him. What's the situation? Did you give yourself away? My dad's brows were tightly knit. Yanshu, tell us what you think. My mom, sitting next to my dad, nudged him with her elbow, poking him slightly. My dad swallowed his words, but he sighed again as he returned. Uncle understands. The loss of your parents hit you hard, and those relatives of yours really went too far. It's one thing to deceive them, but you shouldn't keep the ones who genuinely care about you in the dark. My mother lowered her head and wiped her tears with her hand. My parents, being such kind-hearted people, have shown true concern for Song Yanshu. Your uncle and aunt might not be blood-related, but they've treated you like their own son over the years. When you lost your sight, your aunt was heartbroken. You should have told us something, shutting yourself off and not seeing even us. How can you expect to manage like that? I'm sorry, Uncle Auntie. As they were speaking, my dad noticed me at the entrance. Gigi's here. Good timing. You probably don't know, Yanshu's eyesight has recovered. I pressed my lips together. After a pause, I spoke up. Recovered. That's wonderful. Cause for celebration. How fantastic. I clapped my hands in approval, my gaze sweeping over my mom. only to see her eyeing me with a squint. Did you know already? My clapping stopped. I. Enough. My mom interrupted me. What's done is done. Now that you're willing to tell us the truth, it's good. It's been a year since your parents passed, Yenshu, and a year since you graduated. Have you thought about what you want to do in the future? I found a job. My dad patted his leg. That's good, that's good. I knew Yenshu was so outstanding that every company would want him. There's one more thing. Song Yenshu suddenly looked up at me with gentle eyes. I was taken aback. My parents followed his gaze towards me, and I held my breath, while my dad sensed something was off. What's the matter? My heart tightened, feeling inexplicably nervous. Uncle, Auntie, if my life gets back on track, would it be okay if I? Song Yenshu stood up and walked towards me. I was frozen in place, unable to move, watching as he approached, stood beside me, yet kept a respectful distance, as if nothing had happened last night. Could I pursue Gigi? My dad's eyes widened. Pursue Gigi? I. Song Yenshu, about to speak, suddenly froze. I took his hand and smiled. I've liked my brother for a long time. Mom, Dad, I want to be with my brother. My dad stared at us in dumbfounded silence. Then my mom suddenly burst into laughter. I was telling your father before that there was something special between Gigi and Yenshu. But he wouldn't believe me. And here our daughter has me to read her like an open book. Song Yenshu also held my hand tightly. I know this might be sudden for Uncle and Auntie, but I've indeed liked Gigi for a long time. After my parents passed away, Gigi has been my only emotional support. I can't lose her. Uncle and Auntie, if you're willing to trust me, I promise I'll pursue Gigi once I'm financially independent, and I will never make her regret it. My mom said, you were practically raised in front of us. How could we not trust you? You don't know this, but your uncle's ideal son-in-law is you. Don't be fooled by his stunned look, he's ecstatic inside. As she spoke, she stood up and nudged us. All right, isn't it good that you can see this and are pursuing Gigi? Old Shun, snap out of it, go cook. Let's celebrate this. My dad then came to his senses and followed my mom into the kitchen. I took the opportunity, while they were turned around, to look up and kiss Song Yenshu. With a curl of his eyelashes, he said, you better be ready to take care of me, my imperfect doll. He looked down at me and smiled. Meanwhile, Jiang Yinqing sent me a WeChat message. How did it go? I quickly typed back 2 words. Got it. Hesitating for a moment, I asked another question. What about you and Lin Si? The message was sent away, and within 10 seconds, Jiang Yinqing sent back a set of photos. It was their photo together. I put away my phone, ran over, and wrapped my arm around Song Yenshu's. Very nice. I can be together with my imperfect doll forever.